You can call me Dr. Vance, Evelyn Vance. I'm 33, and up until about a month ago, my life's work was a highly specialized form of pediatric neurology that, let's be honest, maybe a dozen people on Earth actually understood. Then, my treatment protocol for children started producing results that bordered on miraculous, and suddenly, I was the featured speaker at the $7 million Nightingale Foundation charity ball. I should have been over the moon, but my family had a different perspective. They've always seen me as their brilliant but socially hopeless daughter, and they were convinced I was about to humiliate myself. Before I get into the thick of it, I'm curious where everyone is listening from. Drop a comment, and hey, if you've ever felt like someone was trying to dim your spotlight, hit that like and subscribe button. Being born a Vance meant you were born with a blueprint for your life. Our family tree was a veritable forest of physicians, 4 generations deep, each one more distinguished and socially polished than the last. My parents, Doctors Margaret and Richard Vance, were celebrated neurosurgeons. Their dinner parties were legendary, featuring guest lists that included state senators and hospital board chairs, where medical innovations were debated over vintage wines, and everyone was impossibly charming. And then there was me. From a young age, I was branded the smart but awkward one. I found more comfort in the pages of dense medical textbooks than in learning the art of small talk. I could map out the human nervous system by heart at age 12, but I'd trip over a simple hello at my parents' functions. My mother would sigh, a sound I knew well, and say, "Evelyn has a remarkable mind, but 0 social graces." My sister, Olivia, was the polar opposite. 3 years my junior, she was blessed with an effortless poise that could disarm anyone. She could coax a smile and a sizable donation out of the most cantankerous hospital benefactor before the dessert course was served. While I would find a quiet corner to blend into the wallpaper at family events, Olivia would glide through the room, a social maestro in her element. Olivia is the one carrying on the true Vance legacy, my father would often boast. The perfect blend of medical brilliance and social influence. The unsaid part always hung in the air, a silent, damning diagnosis. Evelyn had only mastered half the family formula. Despite the constant, painful comparisons, I poured every ounce of myself into my work. If I couldn't be the social butterfly they wanted, I would be the most formidable researcher they'd ever seen. I graduated at the top of my class from medical school specialized in neurology and landed a research position at the Fairview Pediatric Research Institute. There, I dedicated myself to pediatric neurological disorders. For the last 4 years, my entire world had been a new treatment protocol for children with a rare, debilitating neurological condition. The work was grueling, filled with endless late nights and a mountain of failed experiments. But 6 months ago, we had a breakthrough. The protocol started yielding extraordinary results. 80% of the children in the trial showed profound improvement. Kids who had been given the grimmest of prognoses were suddenly beginning to flourish. The medical world started to pay attention. My research was published in leading journals, and my protocol was being adopted by colleagues across the country. I was intensely proud, but I was content to stay in the background, letting the results speak for themselves. I was never the Vance who craved the spotlight. Then the invitation arrived. It was from the prestigious Nightingale Foundation Charity Ball, an annual gala that raised over $7 million for pediatric care. They wanted me to be their keynote speaker. Not my famous parents. Not my captivating sister. Me. The invitation was specific, requesting that I present my groundbreaking research to the 400 attendees, a crowd composed of the country's wealthiest philanthropists and most powerful medical directors. When the thick, embossed envelope arrived, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I read the formal request from Isabella Rossi, the ball's chairwoman. She wrote about how impressed the committee was with my work and how they believe my presentation could inspire a new level of giving. For the first time in my life, I would be the Vance in the spotlight. The idea was equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. Public speaking was right up there with open-heart surgery on myself in terms of things I feared, but a wave of resolve washed over me. This was my chance. Maybe this could finally show my family I was more than just their awkward, book-smart daughter. I practiced my speech relentlessly, in front of my bathroom mirror and then in front of my mentor, Dr. Lena Petrova, who had championed my research from day one. "You are going to be absolutely magnificent, Evelyn," Lena told me after I stumbled through it for the third time. "Your passion for these kids is what matters. That authenticity is more powerful than any practiced social skill." I even waded into what I had always considered Olivia's territory, shopping for a gown. I found a stunning sapphire blue dress that made me feel, for the first time, both professional and confident. Standing in that fitting room, I let myself dream of the moment I'd stand at that podium, representing my own work, finally making my family proud on my own terms. The Sunday before the ball, I drove to my parents' sprawling suburban estate for our obligatory monthly dinner. With the invitation tucked in my purse and my heart full of a fragile hope, I prayed that this one achievement might finally close the gap between the daughter I was and the daughter they always wished I'd be. The Vance family dinner was a ritual I'd endured since I moved out. On the third Sunday of every month, we'd gather at my mother's impeccably set dining table to trade accomplishments, like playing cards. The script was always the same. My parents would recount their latest keynote at some international conference. Olivia would regale us with a story of charming and influential figure, and I'd offer a brief technical update on my research before the conversation inevitably shifted to more interesting topics. But this Sunday, I thought, would be different. I finally had news that was impossible to ignore, even for my achievement-obsessed family. I'd taken extra care with my appearance, wearing a silk blouse Olivia had once offhandedly remarked almost makes you look polished. I held the formal invitation in my purse like a shield. "Evelyn, you're looking positively radiant tonight," my mother noted as she served her signature coq au vin. "Did something good happen with that little research project of yours?" The opening was perfect. I took a steadying breath and laid the invitation on the table. "Actually, yes. The Nightingale Foundation has invited me to be their keynote speaker at the charity ball this year. They want me to present my treatment protocol to all the major donors." A brief, stunned silence descended upon the room. My father was the first to move, reaching for the invitation and adjusting his reading glasses. "Well, this is unexpected," he said, his tone meticulously neutral. My mother's smile was tight, strained. "How lovely, dear. The Rossi Committee does such wonderful work." Olivia, examining her flawless manicure, finally looked up. "Congrats, Ev. That ball is like the social Olympics for the medical world. Who would have thought they'd pick you?" And there it was, the signature backhanded compliment, the verbal pat on the head that defined our relationship. But I was determined. I wouldn't let her burst my bubble. "Isabella Rossi signed the invitation personally," I pressed on. "She said my work could inspire millions in new donations for pediatric research." My parents exchanged a look I knew all too well. It was their silent, coded language, the one that meant they were concerned but trying to hide it. Speaking to 400 people at a gala is a far cry from a medical symposium, Evelyn, my mother said, delicately setting down her fork. That crowd needs to be charmed, entertained, not just lectured at. My father cleared his throat. "Evelyn, we are, of course, proud of your research, but these high society functions, they require a certain finesse. Perhaps you should consider getting some help with your presentation." The fragile bubble of excitement I'd brought with me to dinner began to deflate, hissing air with every word they spoke. "I've already been working on my speech. Dr. Petrova has been helping me." "Lena Petrova is a brilliant scientist," my mother conceded, "but she hardly runs in the social circles that will be at that ball." Olivia reached across the table, patting my hand in a gesture that was meant to look supportive, but felt deeply patronizing. "Ev, remember that symposium last year? When you knocked over the entire water pitcher during your QA? My cheeks flushed with heat at the memory. That was an accident. I was caught off guard. And what about the hospital fundraiser where you got so flustered you called the chief of surgery by the wrong name 3 times in a row? My father added, his tone not unkind, but firm. I was 26, Dad. I've given dozens of presentations since then, I protested, but my voice was already losing its conviction. The conversation had pivoted. What began as my moment of triumph had morphed into a family intervention focused on my social inadequacies. My mother insisted I needed coaching on everything from my posture to my vocal cadence. My father suggested I keep my presentation under 5 minutes to minimize potential mishaps. And Olivia, with a voice full of feigned sympathy, offered the final crushing blow. I know all those people, Ev. I could help you. I know what they respond to. We wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself. There it was. The fear that was really driving them, spoken aloud. They weren't proud of me. They were terrified I would embarrass them. The rest of the dinner was a blur. I nodded and smiled, pretending to listen to their helpful suggestions, while the joy of my achievement shriveled and died under the weight of their doubt. I drove home that night, tears stinging my eyes. My apartment, my usual sanctuary filled with books and research papers, felt cold and empty. I tried to summon the confidence I'd felt just hours before, but my family's voices echoed in my mind, a chorus of condescension chipping away at my self-belief. The week that followed was an escalating campaign of helpful interventions. My mother called daily with unsolicited advice on my hairstyle and the rhythm of my speech. My father emailed me articles on public speaking, highlighting passages about the perils of sounding too academic. But Olivia was the most relentless. She texted constantly, offering to take me shopping for a more appropriate gown, implying my sapphire blue choice wouldn't impress the right people. She sent me links to makeup artists and celebrity speech coaches, each one a subtle reinforcement of the same message. I wasn't good enough for this. On Wednesday, my disappointment curdled into dread. I was at my parents' house to drop off some medical journals my father wanted when I overheard my mother on the phone in her study. "Yes, Sophia, we're managing the situation," she was saying to one of her high society friends. "The Rossi committee really should have run it by us first. Evelyn is a genius with her research, but putting her on that stage, it's setting her up for failure. We have relationships with most of the major donors, and we just can't risk." She trailed off, spotting me in the doorway, and ended the call abruptly. The look on my face must have told her I'd heard everything, because she immediately launched into a defense, explaining how they were simply trying to support me. My suspicions were confirmed the next morning. I called Isabella Rossi to ask about the presentation format, and she sounded slightly confused. She mentioned that my mother had been in touch with the committee, suggesting I might need substantial support, and had even proposed several modifications to the program. Driving home from the lab that night, a mix of anger and despair churning in my gut, my phone buzzed with a social media notification. Olivia had posted a photo of herself with a caption that made my blood run cold. So excited to help my brilliant but shy sister prepare for her big Gala speech. The Vance sisters taking on pediatric research together. We weren't taking on anything together. This was my research, my invitation, my moment. Yet my family was systematically rewriting the story to position themselves, specifically Olivia, as the socially competent handler for their awkward, brilliant problem child. The final devastating blow came when I overheard my mother on another call, this time to Isabella Rossi herself. I'd stopped by their house again, and from the hallway I heard the words that solidified my worst fears. "We've devised a solution to the Evelyn problem." My own mother, referring to me as a problem that needed to be solved. Any lingering hope that my family truly had faith in me evaporated in that instant. I stood frozen in the hallway, my mother's words echoing in my ears. The Evelyn problem, as if I were a complication to be managed, not a daughter to be celebrated. When she came out of her study and saw me, her expression shifted from surprise to a practiced, brittle smile. Evelyn, darling, I didn't hear you come in. What exactly is the Evelyn problem? I asked. My voice was surprisingly steady, a stark contrast to the hurricane raging inside me. My mother sighed, placing a perfectly manicured hand on my arm. You heard that out of context, dear. We're just concerned about you being comfortable at such a high-pressure event. Comfortable? Or are you worried I'll embarrass the Vance name? Evelyn, you know how you get in social situations. You freeze. You stumble over your words. Your research is brilliant, but presentation matters in these circles. We're trying to protect you. I don't need protection, I said, my voice rising. I need my family to believe in me. My mother's expression softened into something that looked unnervingly like pity. We do believe in your intelligence, but we also know your limitations, which is why we think it would be best if Olivia accompanied you on stage, just to smooth things over if needed. The casual way she suggested hijacking my presentation made my stomach clench. That is not happening. This is my invitation, my research. We've already spoken with the committee, she replied, her tone making it clear that the matter was settled. They understand our concerns. That evening, my father called a family meeting. I walked into their home to find Olivia already there, her face a mask of sympathy but with an undercurrent of triumph that made my skin crawl. Evelyn, my father began once we were all seated in his mahogany-paneled study. We've given this a great deal of thought. Your research deserves the best possible platform, and the ball is a vital opportunity. But we have to be practical. Practical how? I challenged. Meaning, Olivia will join you on stage to provide support. You'll begin the presentation, explain the technical science, and then Olivia will help translate the human impact for the donors in more accessible terms. The implication that I was incapable of communicating my own life's work felt like a physical slap. I have been preparing for this presentation for weeks. I don't need a translator. Olivia leaned forward, her voice syrupy sweet. Ev, no one is saying you aren't capable. But these people, they respond to a certain kind of storytelling. I know how to speak their language. This isn't about language, I retorted, my voice shaking with frustration. This is about you and Mom and Dad not believing I can do this by myself. My mother waved a dismissive hand. This is not about belief, Evelyn. This is about pragmatism. That ball raises millions for sick children. We can't risk that funding because of personal pride. Personal pride. As if demanding to present my own work was some act of vanity, not a basic plea for respect. I left that meeting feeling utterly steamrolled, yet a small flicker of defiance remained. That flicker nearly died the next day when a colleague, forwarded me an email chain between my mother and the Gala committee. My parents had framed their interference as a medical concern, subtly suggesting my social anxiety could make the presentation a difficult experience for everyone. They had expertly positioned Olivia as a support presenter, someone who could ensure the donors weren't alienated by my overly technical approach. The manipulation was so masterful it was suffocating. They'd twisted their control to look like compassion. That evening, Olivia posted on social media again, helping my brilliant sister prep for her big speech. So proud of all her hard work and happy to support her shy nature with some social butterfly skills. The comments poured in, praising her for being such a wonderful, selfless sister. No one questioned why a world-class neurologist would need her non-neurologist sister to explain her own research. 2 days later, I discovered Olivia had bought a gown, a sapphire blue one nearly identical to the one I had so carefully chosen. When I confronted her, she feigned confusion at my anger. I thought it would be a cute statement. The Vance sisters, united for children's health. It makes a better story for the event. There is no us in this presentation, I said through gritted teeth. This is my research, my invitation. Of course it's your research, Ev, she cooed, her voice maddeningly placating. I'm just helping you shine. You know these big society events stress you out. Every conversation with them left me feeling smaller, chipping away at my confidence until I started to believe them. Maybe they were right. Maybe I would freeze up, mumble, and humiliate myself. In a moment of desperation, I called my mentor, Dr. Lena Petrova. We met at a small coffee shop far from the hospital where my family's influence was everywhere. "Your family is wrong," Lena said, her voice firm after I laid out the whole sordid story. "I have watched you present your work dozens of times. Yes, you get nervous, but your passion and your expertise always shine through. That authenticity is 1,000 times more compelling than some slick performance. But what if they're right? What if I fail? So what if you do?" Lena challenged. "You stumble over a word, you take a breath, and you recover. The work speaks for itself, Evelyn, and you are the only person who can truly do it justice." Her unwavering faith was like a shot of adrenaline. I left that coffee shop with a renewed sense of purpose, but that resolve was tested almost immediately. I got a call from Isabella Rossi, the chairwoman. "Dr. Vance," she began, her voice formal. "I wanted to touch base about the presentation format. I seem to be receiving some conflicting information from your family." I took a deep breath. "What kind of conflicting information?" "Your mother has suggested you might prefer to have your sister co-present. But the invitation was extended to you, Dr. Vance, specifically to you based on your groundbreaking research." "I want to present alone," I said, the words coming out clearer and stronger than I expected. "This is my work, and I am more than capable of communicating it." There was a brief pause on the line. "That was my understanding as well," Isabella said. "Thank you for clarifying." The call should have been a victory, but the relief was short-lived. Later that afternoon, I received the digital proof of the Gala program from the committee. To my horror, it listed the main presentation as "A Breakthrough in Pediatric Neurology" by Dr. Evelyn Vance, presented by Olivia Vance. I immediately called Isabella, who sounded just as shocked and promised to fix it. An hour later, she called back, her discomfort palpable. "It seems there was a miscommunication with the graphic designer," she explained carefully. "Your mother provided some alternative text after the final proof was approved. I assure you it will be corrected for the final printing." The audacity of it stole my breath. My family wasn't just undermining me in conversations. They were actively working to erase me from my own moment. That night, I fell apart. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by my presentation notes, and just sobbed. A lifetime of being the awkward daughter, the brilliant but socially inept Vance, came crashing down on me. Maybe I should just pull out, let Olivia have the spotlight she so clearly craved. As I spiraled, my phone rang. It was Mark, a colleague who had been in the trenches with me on the protocol from day one. "Evelyn, you okay? You seemed really off when you left the lab today." I don't know why, but I told him everything, the whole ugly story of my family's manipulation. "That is absolutely insane," Mark said when I finished. "I've seen you present our research to the most intimidating review boards. You get a little nervous, sure, but you know this protocol better than anyone on the planet. No one else should be up there." His words were a lifeline. I'd been so consumed by my family's narrative that I'd forgotten other people saw me differently. Our call was interrupted by another social media notification. Olivia had posted a new photo, this time wearing the sapphire blue gown that matched mine exactly. The caption read, "Proud to support my shy sister at her gala debut. Can't wait to help present her amazing work." The post was flooded with likes and comments praising Olivia's selflessness. The narrative was complete. The stage was perfectly set for her to swoop in and rescue the event from the Evelyn problem. I stared at the screen, a storm of hurt and rage building inside me. This wasn't just about one presentation anymore. It was about years of being minimized, of having my light dimmed so that others could feel brighter. The gala was in 3 days. My family had manipulated, undermined, and rewritten my story. But they had made one critical miscalculation. The quiet Vance daughter had finally had enough. The day of the ball arrived on a perfect spring evening, the kind of weather that usually felt like a good omen. I stood in my apartment staring at my reflection in the sapphire blue gown, which now felt like a costume for a role I no longer wanted to play. But despite the knot of dread in my stomach, I was going. This was my work, my accomplishment, and I would not be erased from my own story. I arrived at the Grand Plaza Hotel a full 30 minutes early. The ballroom was breathtaking, a sea of crystal chandeliers, white orchids, and sapphire accents. Behind the main podium, a massive screen displayed the Nightingale Foundation logo interspersed with photos of smiling children, several of whom were from my own clinical trial. My brief moment of awe was shattered when I saw Olivia across the room, already charming the crowd in her identical sapphire gown. She was talking animatedly with a group of major donors, gesturing toward my research poster, which was displayed near the entrance. She was pointing to data points, explaining them with her signature easy charm as if the work were her own. Before I could even process the audacity, my parents were at my side. My mother was a vision in a silver gown, my father a commanding presence in his tuxedo. "Evelyn, there you are," my mother said, her voice a low, urgent whisper. "We were worried you'd be late." The invitation said 7. "It's 6:30, I replied, my voice tight. "In these circles, early is on time," my father intoned. "Olivia has already made contact with the Westbrooks and the Chengs. They're very interested in the research. My research," I corrected, putting a fine point on it, "which I will be presenting." My parents exchanged that glance again, the one that spoke 1,000 words I was never meant to hear. "About that," my mother began, her voice softening into a delicate, persuasive tone. "We've spoken with Isabella, and we all agree that a joint presentation would be the most effective strategy. You can handle the dense science, and Olivia can translate the emotional impact." "Isabella agreed to this?" I asked, my voice laced with disbelief. "She understands that maximizing donations is the ultimate goal," my father replied smoothly. "This is about the children, Evelyn, not individual accolades." The manipulation was so practiced, so polished, it almost sounded logical. Of course it was about the children. Of course the fundraising was paramount. But buried under those noble truths was the one unspoken belief that I wasn't enough to achieve those goals on my own. As more guests filled the ballroom, I found myself in a bizarre, recurring play. My parents would introduce me as our brilliant researcher daughter, and then, in the same breath, introduce Olivia as our daughter who will be helping present the groundbreaking treatment tonight. The distinction was subtle, but devastating. The most painful moments came from the guests themselves. Many approached their expressions a mixture of confusion and pity. "So you're the doctor who did the research?" one elderly woman asked, her eyes darting between me and Olivia in our matching dresses. "Your sister was just explaining it to us. She has such a gift for making it all sound so simple." "Yes, I'm the neurologist who developed the protocol," I confirmed, my smile feeling like a cheap mask. "How wonderful that your sister is here to help you present it," the woman replied, patting my arm kindly. "Public speaking can be so daunting." With every one of these interactions, I felt a piece of my accomplishment being chipped away, until I was reduced to nothing more than the awkward sister in need of a handler. Olivia, for her part, played her role flawlessly. She publicly showered me with praise, my brilliant sister, her incredible mind, while simultaneously gutting my authority. When donors asked me a technical question, she would often jump in with, "What my sister is trying to say is," before I'd even had a chance to formulate an answer. An hour into the event, just as dinner was being served, my father pulled me aside. "Evelyn, I think it might be best if you let Olivia take the lead tonight." "What?" "That is not what we discussed, and it's certainly not what the invitation said. The committee is concerned about maximizing donor engagement," he explained, using his delivering bad news physician voice. "Your practice run yesterday was concerning." "What practice run?" "I didn't do a practice run for the committee. My father had the grace to look momentarily uncomfortable. Your mother shared a video of you practicing at home. The violation was so profound it felt like a physical blow. My mother had secretly recorded me practicing in the privacy of her home, a moment I thought was safe, and used it as evidence against me. You might be more comfortable watching from backstage, my father suggested gently. Olivia has memorized your key points. She will give you full credit, of course. I was spared from having to respond by the arrival of Isabella Rossi. She was a formidable woman in her 60s, with eyes that missed nothing. She strode toward our family huddle with a clear sense of purpose. Dr. Vance, we haven't had a chance to connect this evening. I was hoping to go over the final details for your presentation. Before I could open my mouth, my mother smoothly intercepted. Isabella, we were just finalizing the format. Given Evelyn's rather specialized knowledge, we think it best if Olivia handles the main presentation. Evelyn can then address any technical follow-up questions. Isabella's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. That is not the arrangement we discussed, Margaret. The invitation was extended to Dr. Evelyn Vance, based on her research. Yes, and we are so appreciative, my mother purred. But we all want what's best for the fundraising effort, don't we? Evelyn can be quite technical. I stood there, mute, as they discussed me as if I were a piece of faulty equipment. The humiliation was a hot burn in my chest, and I could feel tears threatening. I excused myself to the restroom, desperate for a moment to compose myself before I broke down in front of hundreds of people. In the opulent marble bathroom, I stared at my reflection, barely recognizing the pale, defeated woman looking back. I had let my family define me for so long that I had started to believe their narrative. The confident researcher who was helping to save children's lives had been replaced by this insecure shadow of a person. As I was dabbing at my eyes, the bathroom door swung open and Olivia walked in. She stopped when she saw me, her face arranging itself into a mask of practiced concern. Ev, are you okay? You seemed really overwhelmed out there. Am I okay? I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You're trying to steal my presentation. You're wearing my dress. You're pretending to be an expert on my life's work. And you're asking me if I'm okay? For a split second, she looked genuinely ashamed, but it passed as quickly as it came. I'm trying to help you. You know how you get at these things. Remember the Wilson fundraiser? You nearly passed out. That was 7 years ago. I have given dozens of presentations since then, to medical audiences, she countered. This is different. These people need to be inspired, not bored with neural pathways. And you think I can inspire people with my own research? The research I've poured my entire life into for 4 years? Olivia sighed, turning to check her own reflection in the mirror. Ev, this isn't personal. We're just playing to our strengths. You're the brilliant one. I'm the people person. Together, we make a complete Vance. Her words hit the very core of my deepest insecurity, the lifelong belief that I was only half of what a Vance was supposed to be. I was the brain, but she was the heart, the face, the part that actually mattered in their world. I left the bathroom without another word, feeling more defeated than ever. As I stepped back into the hallway, I overheard my mother talking to a cluster of her friends. Yes, Evelyn's work is brilliant, absolutely brilliant, but between us, she's just not suited for the spotlight. Too much time in the lab, you know. Thank goodness Olivia can step in. She can make even the most complex science sound utterly captivating. The casual, complete dismissal of my capabilities was the final straw. I slipped into a small alcove and frantically called Lena, my mentor. They've completely taken over, I said, my voice cracking. My own family is telling everyone I'm incapable, and Olivia is already acting like she did the work. Evelyn, listen to me. Lena's voice was a firm anchor in my sea of panic. This is your work, your invitation. Do not let them do this to you. I don't think I can fight them. Not here. Not now. Then I'm coming, she said, her voice decisive. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Do not let them start that presentation without you. I ended the call and took a shaky breath. As I returned to the ballroom, I made a horrifying discovery. The tablet on the lectern, prepped for the presentation, had been tampered with. My carefully constructed slides had been simplified, the complex data replaced with broad, emotional statements, and Olivia's name was now listed right alongside mine on the title slide. The crushing weight of their betrayal left me breathless. This wasn't about my social anxiety anymore. This was a calculated, deliberate coup to steal my achievement and install Olivia in my place. As the dinner service wrapped up and Isabella Rossi walked toward the podium to begin the introductions, a cold hollowness spread through me. A lifetime of letting my family define me had led to this moment of total erasure. I had two choices. I could disappear and let Olivia claim the stage, or I could somehow find the strength to fight for what was mine. The ballroom lights dimmed. Isabella welcomed the guests, and I stood frozen at the edge of the room, tears blurring my vision as I watched my sister straighten her identical sapphire gown, preparing to step into my spotlight. As Isabella Rossi began her introductory remarks, I ducked back into the restroom, unable to watch my life's work being hijacked. The opulent space was empty, a temporary sanctuary from the public humiliation unfolding outside. I splashed cold water on my wrists, an old med school trick for calming nerves, but it did nothing to cool the fire of betrayal in my chest. The door swung open. I braced myself for Olivia or my mother, but instead, Isabella Rossi herself walked in. Her sharp, intelligent eyes met mine in the mirror. "Dr. Vance," she said, her tone direct but not unkind. "I had a feeling I might find you in here." I straightened up, clinging to what little dignity I had left. "Mrs. Rossi, I'm sorry for disappearing just before the presentation." She moved closer, her expression unreadable. "Evelyn, may I be candid with you?" I just nodded, bracing for a lecture. "I've been observing your family's dynamics all evening, and frankly, something is not right." She crossed her arms, the black silk of her gown rustling. "I invited you here because I read your paper in the New England Journal of Medicine. It was your clarity, your innovation, and the palpable passion for these children that impressed our committee. Not your family's name." My shock must have been obvious. "Your family," she continued, "has crafted a narrative about you that doesn't align with the woman who wrote that paper. The woman who wrote that paper is more than capable of presenting it." "My family thinks I'll embarrass them," I whispered. "They always have." "And what do you think?" she asked, the question sharp and pointed. For so long, my family's perception had been my reality. But beneath all the layers of doubt, there was still the scientist, the researcher, the woman who had done the work. "I believe in my research," I said, my voice gaining a sliver of strength. "I know this protocol better than anyone on this planet." Isabella nodded, a flicker of approval in her eyes. "Then that is what this night is about. Not your sister's charm or your parents' connections. But they've already convinced everyone. They even changed my slides." Isabella's expression hardened. "Without authorization. The board was not aware of the arrangement your family was attempting to broker. This is your invitation, Dr. Vance. Your stage." She glanced at her watch. "I need to get back out there. But before I go, you need to know something. I will be introducing Dr. Evelyn Vance to present her groundbreaking research. The only question is whether you'll be the one walking onto that stage." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I grew up with 3 older brothers who were convinced a woman could never be a surgeon. Sometimes, family is the last group of people to see who you've really become." As the door clicked shut, her words echoed in the quiet room. This was my invitation, my research, my moment. The door opened again, and this time Lena rushed in, slightly out of breath in a hastily thrown-on evening dress. "Evelyn, I got here as fast as I could. What's happening?" I quickly recounted my conversation with Isabella, a spark of defiance finally igniting in the cold pit of my stomach. "She's right," Lena said fiercely. Your family built this cage for you, this socially inept character. But I've watched you command the attention of the hospital board, of skeptical colleagues, of parents desperate for hope. Yes, you get nervous, but your passion always cuts through. But what if I freeze? Then you take a breath and you keep going, Lena said simply. These children are walking and talking because of your protocol, Evelyn, not because of Olivia's schmoozing. As we spoke, the door opened a third time. Mark, my research colleague, poked his head in, looking deeply uncomfortable. Sorry, I know this is the women's room, but they're about to start and there's chaos at the podium. What kind of chaos? I asked. Your sister is up there, but Isabella Rossi just announced she wants to hear from Dr. Vance. Alone. Your parents are trying to run interference, pushing for the joint presentation. Lena gripped my shoulders, forcing me to meet her eyes. Evelyn, this is it. This is your moment. Are you going to let them define you, or are you going to show them who you are? And in that instant, something inside me broke free. A lifetime of being minimized, of being the awkward daughter, of having my achievements qualified and asterisked. It all came to a head. I didn't need their approval. I'm going out there, I said, my voice clearer and stronger than it had been all night. Mark grinned. That's the Dr. Vance I know. We walked out of the restroom as a unit. The tension at the front of the ballroom was thick enough to cut with a scalpel. Olivia stood at the podium in our matching gown, looking flustered as Isabella held firmly to the microphone. My parents were hovering nearby, my mother gesturing wildly while my father wore a strained, public-facing smile. As I walked toward them, Isabella saw me, and a wave of relief washed over her face. Ah, and here she is now, ladies and gentlemen, the woman of the hour, Dr. Evelyn Vance. My mother tried to intercept me, her hand clamping down on my arm. Evelyn, we discussed this. A joint presentation is what's best. For the first time in my 33 years, I physically removed her hand from my arm. No, Mother, I said calmly. That is not what's happening. The look of pure shock on her face was almost worth the entire ordeal. Before she could recover, I continued my walk to the stage. Olivia stood her ground, clearly expecting me to fall in line with the family's plan. Evelyn, she hissed as I reached her side. We agreed I would handle the donor-friendly parts. No, Olivia, I replied, my voice even. You and our parents agreed to that. I didn't. Isabella smoothly stepped between us. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have the profound privilege of hearing directly from the brilliant mind behind a revolutionary treatment that is already changing lives. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Evelyn Vance. She handed me the microphone and whispered, "The stage is yours, doctor, and your original slides are queued up." Olivia had no choice but to step back, her perfect smile cracking at the edges as she watched her coup dissolve in real time. My parents stood on the sidelines, my mother looking aghast, my father's expression unreadable. As I took my place at the podium, I saw Lena and Mark find seats near the front, their faces beaming with encouragement. Isabella gave me a slight, affirming nod from the head table. I looked out at the sea of 400 faces. I felt the familiar flutter of nerves, but underneath it was something new and powerful: ownership. This was my work, my passion, my stage. And for once, I wasn't going to let my family's story about me overshadow the truth of who I was. "Good evening," I began, my voice miraculously steady. "My name is Dr. Evelyn Vance, and for the past 4 years, my team and I have been developing a new treatment protocol for children with neurodevelopmental disorders. Tonight, I want to tell you not just about the science, but about the children whose lives we are changing." As I took that first deep breath and launched into my presentation, I felt a fundamental shift inside me. The Evelyn my family saw, the awkward, anxious girl who needed to be managed, began to recede, and in her place stood a woman who was finally, fully claiming her own voice. The first minute at the podium was a battle. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, and my hands trembled as I advanced the first slide. But then, as I started to explain the science, the neural pathways, the very mechanics of the disorder my protocol targeted, I found my footing. This was my territory. This was the work I had lived and breathed for years. These were the children whose faces I knew, whose parents I had held hands with. In this space, I wasn't the awkward Vance daughter. I was Dr. Evelyn Vance, neurologist. Traditional therapies have focused on managing symptoms, I explained, clicking to a slide showing complex brain scans. But our protocol is different. It targets the underlying neural architecture, stimulating new growth in areas of the brain we once thought were permanently damaged. I risked a glance at the audience, half expecting to see bored, glazed-over faces. Instead, they were leaning in. A prominent surgeon in the front row was nodding, completely engaged. That small gesture was all the fuel I needed. I moved from the hard science to the human stories. Let me tell you about a boy named Leo. When he entered our trial at age 5, he couldn't speak a single word. After 6 months on the protocol, I clicked to a video. A little boy with bright eyes was on screen, reading a picture book aloud to his mother, who was openly weeping with joy. A collective gasp went through the room, followed by a wave of appreciative murmurs. And this is Maya. At 7, she had never taken an independent step. Another video played, this one of a little girl, her face a mask of fierce concentration, walking slowly but steadily into her father's arms. With each child's story, my confidence swelled. I wasn't just presenting data, I was sharing miracles. The technical details of my research were no longer dry facts. They were the tools that had built these new lives. I could see my family's reactions from the corner of my eye. Olivia stood at the side of the stage, her practiced smile now frozen and brittle as she watched the audience hang on my every word. My mother sat ramrod straight in her chair, her expression a mixture of disbelief and confusion. My father looked surprised. Midway through, I saw Lena give me a discreet thumbs up. Mark was beaming, and Isabella Rossi was watching me with a look of pure, unadulterated satisfaction, occasionally glancing toward my parents with an expression that screamed, "I told you so." The implications of this protocol extend far beyond our initial trial, I continued, hitting my stride. We are now seeing potential applications for a range of related neurological conditions, expanding our ability to help exponentially. I clicked to a graph, but instead of just reading the data, I translated it. In human terms, what this means is that thousands of children who were once given a limited prognosis now have a real pathway to a better life. As I neared my conclusion, the anxiety that had been my lifelong companion was gone, replaced by a clear, resonant passion. In closing, I want to share one final story. A boy named Sam was 8 when he joined our trial. His parents had been told he would likely never advance past a second-grade level. Today, I clicked to the final video. It showed a boy of about 10, standing confidently in front of his class, presenting a science project about volcanoes. Sam is now testing above his grade level, and he was recently elected class representative. When I asked him what he wants to be when he grows up, he said, "A doctor, like you." So I can help other kids whose brains work differently understand how special they are. A profound silence fell over the room for a beat, and then it erupted. The applause started in the back and rolled forward like a wave, growing in intensity until the entire room was on its feet. A standing ovation, not for the polished charm my sister would have delivered, but for the raw, authentic passion of the work itself. As the applause thundered on, Isabella rejoined me at the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, that is the power of innovative research fueled by genuine compassion," she announced. "With your support tonight, we can extend the reach of Dr. Vance's life-changing work to children across the country." The fundraising began in a frenzy. The energy in the room was electric. Pledges poured in, quickly shattering all previous records. As I stepped away from the podium, I was swarmed. But this time, it was different. Donors approached me not with pity, but with substantive questions about the research. A neurosurgeon from a rival hospital wanted to discuss collaborating. A philanthropist wanted to talk about funding a training program. These were not people humoring the awkward girl. They were peers engaging with a respected colleague. The validation was overwhelming. Olivia approached me, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. That went surprisingly well, Ev. You didn't even seem nervous. That's because I was talking about something I actually know and care about, I replied simply. Well, I'm glad I didn't have to step in, she said, still trying to frame herself as the hero in waiting. My parents came next, their faces a cocktail of shock, confusion, and a strange, delayed pride. Evelyn, that was quite impressive, my father admitted, sounding genuinely stunned. You've clearly come a long way with your public speaking. Several board members said it was the most compelling speech of the night, my mother added, already recalibrating to this new reality. The Westbrooks pledged $100,000. Their praise felt thin and hollow after a lifetime of doubt. Before I could respond, Isabella returned, this time with an impeccably dressed man I recognized as Julian Westbrook, head of one of the country's largest medical research foundations. Dr. Vance, may I introduce Julian Westbrook? He was particularly moved by your presentation. Mr. Westbrook extended his hand. Dr. Vance, the clarity with which you communicated both the science and the soul of your work was extraordinary. My foundation is looking to fund independent research initiatives just like yours, outside the traditional hospital bureaucracy. I would love to discuss a dedicated grant for your team. My mother's eyes widened at the word independent, a clear path to autonomy that would sever me from the family's sphere of influence. That sounds fascinating, Mr. Westbrook, I replied, acutely aware of my family watching, but for once, not caring what they thought. I would be delighted to discuss it. As the night wound down, it was clear that a tectonic shift had occurred. Reporters wanted to interview me, specifically. Colleagues wanted to collaborate with me. Even Olivia's socialite friends came to congratulate me directly. Near the end of the evening, Isabella announced the final fundraising total, over $8 million, a new record. And when she acknowledged who was responsible, she called me back to the stage, alone. Much of tonight's unprecedented success is thanks to Dr. Evelyn Vance, she declared, whose groundbreaking work and passionate advocacy have opened new doors for countless children. As another round of applause filled the ballroom, I saw my family standing together at the edge of the crowd. For the first time in their lives, they were not the center of attention at a major medical event. Vance was being celebrated not for her social connections, but for the sheer, undeniable substance of her work. The victory that night wasn't just in the flawless presentation or the record-breaking funds. It was in finally standing my ground, in reclaiming my story from the people who had tried to write it for me, and in discovering that the voice my family had tried so hard to silence was the one that everyone needed to hear. The days after the ball were a blur of congratulatory emails, interview requests, and follow-up meetings with donors. The Children's Hospital newsletter ran a front-page story with a photo of me at the podium, not the usual Vance family portrait. The city paper ran a feature titled "Breakthrough Doctor Finds Her Voice," highlighting both the science and the incredible funding it had attracted. Not a single article mentioned Olivia or framed me as the shy sister. I was finally being seen on my own terms. Back at the lab, my team greeted me with cheers and cupcakes decorated with tiny icing neurons. To Dr. Vance, Mark toasted with a paper cup of coffee, who not only revolutionized pediatric neurology, but also proved she can give one hell of a speech without any family help. The easy, genuine pride of my colleagues was a world away from the strained dynamics of my family. Here, I was valued for exactly who I was. The contrast was thrown into sharp relief 3 days later when I received a text from my mother. Your father and I would like to have dinner to discuss your presentation and the opportunities arising from it. Thursday at 7. I stared at the message. A part of me wanted to say no, to shield my newfound confidence from their inevitable attempts to manage it, but another part knew this conversation was necessary. Thursday evening, I drove to my parents' house, feeling surprisingly calm. The perfect, intimidating mansion now just seemed like a stage set for a play I was no longer acting in. My parents and Olivia were waiting in the formal dining room. "Evelyn," my mother greeted me, "success agrees with you." "The hospital board can't stop talking about it," my father added. "Julian Westbrook called me yesterday." "That's quite an opportunity, that independent grant." The emphasis on independent was not lost on me. It was their way of acknowledging my move outside their sphere of control. "Yes," I said, "we're meeting next week. It will allow us to expand the trials significantly." "Well, the Vance name certainly helped open that door," my mother commented, a flicker of the old narrative returning. "Julian and your father were residents together." I set down my fork. "Actually, Mother, Mr. Westbrook specifically said he was impressed by the presentation itself. He didn't even realize I was related to Dad until afterward." A tense silence fell. Then Olivia spoke, her voice quiet. "The matching dress was a mistake. I shouldn't have done that. I was taken aback by her directness. I always thought you needed me," she struggled, "that we were a team where I handled the people part and you handled the smart part. I didn't realize I was getting in your way. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me." "I do need support sometimes," I admitted, "but there's a difference between supporting someone and taking over for them." My mother sighed. "We were just trying to protect you, Evelyn. You've always been so sensitive." "Did it ever occur to you," I asked, my tone conversational, "that I was so sensitive because my own family was constantly telling me I was awkward and incapable?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "We may have been overly concerned," he conceded. It was the closest I would ever get to an apology, and I knew it. As the dinner ended, my mother brought up what I knew was the real purpose of the meeting. The annual Medical Innovation Conference is next month. As a family, we should coordinate our appearances. I took a breath. "Actually, I've already been invited to give the keynote on my protocol. I'll be attending, but I'll be presenting my work independently." The silence was deafening. "I see," my father said finally. "That is your choice to make." It was a small concession, but it felt monumental. As I drove home, I felt a mix of sadness and freedom. The family dynamics were shifting, but it was a slow, awkward process. In the months that followed, the Westbrook grant came through, and I was given full autonomy to establish a new specialized treatment center. Lena and I became true colleagues, and my friendship with Mark blossomed into something more. 6 months after the ball, I was preparing for another major presentation, this time at an international conference. A young postdoc, Lily, was watching me practice. "I could never do that," she said. "I'd pass out." I smiled, seeing my old self in her. "You know," I said, "my family spent years convincing me I was incapable of public speaking. They were so certain I'd embarrass myself, they tried to have my sister replace me at a major event." "What happened?" she asked, her eyes wide. "I discovered that when you're speaking about something you're truly passionate about, the fear doesn't go away, but it gets smaller. Your authenticity is what carries you." "Did your family ever come around?" I thought about it. Things were better. Not perfect, but better. They were learning. "They're learning," I said honestly. But more importantly, I stopped waiting for them to. I found my own voice and my own measure of success. The real triumph of the gala hadn't been the standing ovation. It was that I had finally rejected the story others had written for me and claimed the right to write my own. Have you ever had someone try to take credit for your work or minimize your accomplishments? I'd love to hear how you handled it in the comments. Remember, your voice and your achievements matter. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more stories about overcoming expectations, and share this with anyone who needs a reminder of their own worth. because sometimes our greatest strength is found when we finally step out of the shadows that others have created for us. End of story.